It's Kim Nelson. This Rhino video is going to be on doing a Tiffany style head. I'm going to approach a couple of different ways of doing it. One way would be how you would do a very simplified version. This would normally be done with die striking and assembly, often for a peg head assembly for commercial work. And then I'll try and show you a more aesthetically pleasing or evolved version of the same thing. So to do a simplified version, simple version, you need to get the, this is a 6.5 millimeter round, 1 carat stone. You're going to want to get this built up a little ways off the ground here. So off the finger or off the back, off the ground, off the, what would be a gallery wire. This looks about right. I'm going to just see what that one ended up being. That's 4.3 millimeters. That's a lot. So, let's do a 4. So, oh, that's interesting. That ended up being, perhaps that was in radius. I didn't pay that close of attention. So, yeah, 2 millimeters. That's better. And maybe 2.2. There we go. Yeah, so my eyeballing was pretty spot on to begin with. I'm going to draw a plate. I'm going to do a line straight, both sides. Do an offset curve, both sides. Take a look at 0.5 for a millimeter. No, 0.475. That'll give us 0.95 millimeters. It's always good to check your measurements. Yeah. For a 4-prong head, that would be okay. So, I need to see how this is going to interact with that stone. So I'm going to do a project. I'm going to use that stone's contour, although in a simplified form, to determine the basic profile of this setting. I'm going to want that to come in a little bit. And I'm going to want this to go up a ways. Minimum is going to be 0.5 millimeter above the table of the stone. So that's fine. Go ahead and fill at the corner. I'm going to want this to be about that 0.95. Like so. Going to draw a line out as a reference curve from the girdle. Use that to split this curve off. Then do a curve extend curve by arc to point to create a kind of a softly bowed form. Going to rebuild this. I'll go 6'4". I do want to keep that straight line relationship with the top 2 points. So I'll establish that by taking the second point down and move it up onto the top of the first point, and then use Shift key to move it back down. Do the same thing with this curve, with this point. but then I will allow it to come up softly, start giving me my curve. It's not bad. And then I'm going to come off of the inside of this curve. I want to leave enough metal that I have a good bite in for the prong, but more than that would not be necessary. I would like it to roughly follow the curve of that prong. I'm sitting at 0.87. I want that 0.95. So here's what I'm going to do. There is the 0.95. And I will stick with that. That's fine. I'm going to extend this curve. I will split this long curve at the girdle and then do a non-uniform scale. To get a nice curvature. Okay. Tidy this up. Straight line up the middle. Use the straight line here on the ground to clean it up. Mirror. Join. Fillet. The 0 value. Extrude this. Both sides, solid option, yes. 0.475 to give me that total of 9.5 tenths. I've got that. Turn off the curves. Rotate, copy option, yes. 90 degrees. Boolean union. And then in a ring setting, this would normally be turned 45 degrees, the whole thing, without copy option. And the ring shank would be shaped to fit in to this notch. And the bottom of the setting would be shaped to accommodate the finger rest. If it were to be a peg head, then a peg would be brought through here. Like so. Do a polar array. I could have also just dragged a box. Would have been faster. extrude 2 millimeters. Like so. And in this case, that would work well for sitting it on the cruciform where you have it 90 degrees, like we had it before I rotated it. To use it with this prong setting, I would need to rotate that. Sorry, hit trim instead. They look similar when you're working quick, like so. And a solid union. Okay, so that's how I would go about making a very fast quasi-Tiffany style head using plates, basically. And you could make it 6 prongs by doing a third one of these. And that works fine. It's a very commercial approach, but it's perfectly viable. Okay, we're going to do the same idea now with a more evolved sort of approach, a more aesthetic or design approach to a traditional Tiffany head. Take my girdle line here. I will offset that 0.8. And 0.15. In an effort to get that same 9.5 prong. Now what's critical here is once again to get a nice shape. I'm going to grab the quadrant here, both sides, set up an angle that I think is okay. Rebuild the prong 4-3. Turn on the points. Never in a million years do I need to go there. Okay. Once again, I'm going for a nice degree of curvature. Four 3 curves are lovely because it's hard to make an ugly curve from that math. Going to draw a circle, center radius, starting at the bottom and reaching to the quadrant. Use that as a guide to rotate this curve. Into position. Once again, the cutoff of that curve is going to be roughly 0.5 millimeter above the table. Can be more. Depends on the comfort level of your jeweler with low prongs. Offset this to 0.95. And take a look at what I have here. Okay, you're going to want this inside curve. And see, already I have a disappointment because this should have a nice intersection there. So I'd hoped that this would there as well, but it doesn't, and that's because it was an offset curve at a different angle. That's fine. I'm going to split this with that curve. And extend by arc to point. Something that hugs fairly close to the pavilion of the stone. I need to have at least 1.5 millimeters of solid base at the bottom. That looks pretty good. Bring that over. Like so. Now, there are versions of this where I would try and have it open at the bottom. I'm not going to do that with this setting today. Actually, I'm going to leave that curve up for a bit. I do not wish to join any of that actually at this point. Okay, I need to do a couple of things. I need to create an outer surface, which I will do using a revolve command. Now I'm going to want to have this offset. And it's somewhat by eye, so I have to watch as I do it. But let's try minus 0.8. Sorry, didn't mean to drag this down. See what that's going to give me. Probably too much. Minus 0.7. That's pretty close. Minus 0.65. Okay, I'm going to go with that. So the first thing I'm going to do is create an external surface that does what I want it to do. I want that external surface to be internal surface, well, both, I'm working together, but the external surface to undulate in a ribbed-like pattern in a predictable fashion. I need to have this come down so it's at least as deep as this outer shell. Also, I want it to taper so that it's a little wider at the bottom proportionally than at the top. Both those things are going to be accomplished with a non-uniform scale. I don't want to change anything in this direction, so enter 1. That looks nice. And then nothing in that direction, so 1 again. I'm going to take this curve, my original profile curve, and I'm going to array it 8 times on a polar array. like so. And actually, I'm thinking for this setting that I might go with a 6-prong setting. Let's try that. So instead of 4 or 8, I'll do 12. So I'm going to take every other one of these. I'm going to pull it onto the inside surface. Delete input, yes. Just like that. Then I'm going to put this on a separate layer so I can see what I'm doing on the inside here. I'm wondering where my pulled curves went. Oh, there they are. Okay, they're in the same color as that surface. I don't love that. Doesn't really matter. Oops. Unfortunately, that layer was already turned off. Go back again. I'm really using these as a reference more than as actual geometry for the model, because they don't extend all the way down. And while I can make them extend all the way down, it's tedious to do so. So what I'll do instead, I'll lock them and do a extract iso curve toggle T to get it going the right direction. And then I could pick one and then do an array polar, or I can just go around and grab onto each one of those. I'm going to use those curves to split the surface. There we go. We have two pieces that are split because there's actually a seam there. I don't care to work with the seam, so I'll mirror that one over. And that works fine. Okay. Having done that, I can throw away those curves and the guides that I used to create them, just to free up those layers. Bring back my external layer. Do the same thing here using the 6 blue curves, dark blue curves. Making sure I'm getting the expected results. Looks good. All right. I can now get rid of those grooves. Actually, I need to get rid of those. And I don't really need that, but I'll leave it for now in case I find a purpose for it later. Okay, so now I have an inside and outside set of surfaces. I'm going to take this surface and this surface, and I'm going to hide them. I'm going to do a blend surface. And I want it to push out more from the outer surface than it does from the inner surface. That's good. Mirror that over. Now, these are not going to be long enough because of the nature of the blend. So I will extend. To make sure that those end up being long enough. Join them together. Array polar. Six. Go ahead and crop off the bottom. Now I could stick with these, but if I want a truly simple surface, if I was going to do some creative editing later, for example, I would want to rebuild that surface, restructure it, which I will go ahead and do now. Extract edge. Like so. Go ahead and polar array that. And that would give me what I want to sweep a new surface. However, I would like to take a look at what I have down here at the bottom. I believe I'm going to want to modify that. Draw a line straight over. And take a line off of here. Say there. I'm going to move this outward. I don't want as deep of a valley as I have here. That's pretty nice. Okay, and then I will want to scale this curve so that it matches perfectly down here. Going into my right C-plane. And the rest I want to stay this as they were at 1. Okay. Mirror this over. Use these two curves to trim out the rest of this wheel. And array this selection polar. Six times. That ends up with a duplicate curve there, which is fine. I remove the duplicate. Join those into a single curve and recreate my surface. Surface from network curves. Top rail, oh, sorry, bottom rail, top rail, and then section, 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 section. Now the beauty of the surface from curve network is that it can only give you a single surface. It can't give you a poly surface. So even though I'm using poly curves, which with any other surfacing tool would generate a poly surface, these won't. Although I'm seeing something I don't care for here. See how that's doing that pinwheel effect at the top. I don't really care for that. So, set a C-plane to a curve tool. So curve. So I'm going to draw a circle, center radius, going to set a C-plane to that curve. Grab this outline, project it to C-plane. Go back to top, use that to, it won't trim these, I'm sure, because they are no longer fitting to it properly. So I need to delete all but one. I'll want to keep one that's on the this one right here I want to keep. Throw away the rest. I want to trim that off. Get a cutting plane. Trim. Non-uniform scale. Start at the end. No change this direction. This direction, end to end, and then no change. Double check I'm getting good contact. I am. And array that polar. Okay, now I'll make my surface. Bottom rail, top rail, sections. And that's a lovely surface. That'll work just fine. Coming back into my original drawing, I'm going to do a revolve surface. Cap planer holes, and then trim. Join. Okay. So the last thing I have left to do is to create the actual prongs. This is the basic body of the piece, so all I need to do now is to create the prongs themselves. The way I'm going to do that is very similar to the plates that I made in the previous setting. Both sides, offset, 0.95, we'll see how, 0.475, both sides. I'm going to pre-select those just so I can throw them away easily, because now I'm going to use drag a rectangle, and then I'll throw those out. I want to move this down a little bit so that it goes beyond the boundaries of my prong setting. And then I'm going to extrude both sides. Solid, yes. So that I can see how that intersects. Polar array, 3 of them. And you can see I've begun to get my setting in order. So what I'm going to do, pick 2 of these. And actually I need a layer to work with. I am so fond of the red. I'm going to grab all those red curves, group them together and put them in storage. Bring those back. Intersect. Intersect. No longer need those. This is my girdle line, roughly, but I want it to be more precise than that. So I will actually do a cutting plane. Very fond of cutting planes. Those of you who've watched my videos know that. Take a quadrant off of that girdle. Except for I have the wrong thing selected, my bad. And get an intersection of that as well. All of that so I can draw a nice shape. I'm going to explode those. Deselect what I want to keep, which is those 2 outer curves. Throw away the rest. Now, technically, same thing's true here, although I'm really not going to probably use those outer curves at all. But once again, it's good not to have anything extra that I know I'm not going to need, so get rid of those. going to split these. At the girdle. Come into my front view. I'm going to do a curve blend curve. Adjustable. And by holding the Shift key, I can make those into a nice tapered kind of bullet form. Which I will then pull onto this surface. I didn't like how that went, so instead of pulling it, I will project it. Front C-plane, project. Only want one of these, that one. And I didn't have the delete option selected, but easy to fix. Just select these, join them together. Going to pull these onto that inner surface. Delete input, no. So I have that. Going to come into the front view, and I'm going to do a non-uniform scale again. Starting with the point I don't want to move, which is the top of the prong. No changes there, but I want to bring this down fairly close to the bottom of that V. It's going to have now pulled away from that surface, so I'm going to pull it back to it. Now actually I could pull it back or I can project it. I think I'll project it so I can get exactly that angle. Once again, I only want the inside one here, so I'll explode that out. Pull it, take that away from it, and delete the rest. So I have some very colorful stuff going on here. I do need to determine which one of these is the actual curve. It's that one. I didn't have the delete again. All right. So I have these two. Do a lofted surface. And you can see that gives me something pretty crazy I don't want to deal with. So these are poly curves for one. That's going to be a kind of a problem. So I'm going to rebuild these. I'm going to give them lots of points, like 45 by 4, so they're nice and smooth. I give an odd number so it has a center control point so it remains symmetrical. Try that loft again, see if I get better results. I do. Now I'm going to use that as a cutting tool, so I don't want it to be exactly against the surfaces. Too much of a chance it'll fail. So surface, extend surface. Inside, outside, up, up. So that it's bigger than I could possibly need it to be. Gotta find what I did with my, here it is. Okay, so I've got that. I'm going to do a Boolean, check my direction on the surface. I want it to point towards what I want to keep in my Boolean difference. So, analyze direction. No, I want it to keep the rest of the setting. Flip. Array polar. Okay. I'm going to Boolean these one at a time. And there you go. That is a fairly credible Tiffany style setting. You could put once again, this could be a peg head, or you could theoretically open the bottom. I'm going to take a look and see what we've got as far as space there. Because if the hole is smaller than 1.5 millimeters, there's really not much of a point in doing it. It's a 1.5 millimeter hole. Offset that. I need to have about 0.6 to 0.65 to reach that tiniest inclusion there, that tiniest dent. It's very close to not being big enough. I'll do it anyway, just so I can show you how it's done. I'm going to do it 1.3. No, 1.4. That's enough. Extrude both surface, extrude both sides. Solid, yes. Now you can see what I'm ending up with. I'm ending up with a notch in here, which I really don't want. I'm going to do it again without a both sides option. And I have a choice. I can do it tapered, or what I'm actually going to do is just use Control-Shift to select this curve, and then 2D scale using center snap. And you can see that I'm going to have to go small enough that it's really not worth doing. So the only thing you could do at this point would be to go ahead and accept that you have a slight notch there, which I don't think is attractive. So I'm calling that good. Turn off the surface. Decide which one of these to keep, which ones not to keep. That's a good selection. Group, put into storage. And that completes my two heads. One being a 6-prong fluted Tiffany head, and another one being a 4-prong straight slab Tiffany head. And that'll do it. All right, I'll EMAP them just for fun. That's it. Thanks for watching.